For a while, when we first launched the product, we were just doing like a couple $100 a day. When we first started the business, I wish I had thought more about profit. A lot of times people are very hesitant to kind of like pull trigger and like get something moving. I think that's another big problem is like, I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and go like, oh, like, how are you making like so much money? And you're like, how are you doing e-commerce or like this or that? And it's like, because like I took risks. I've had multiple products that have failed. And it's like, it's probably not something I should admit like here, but like I've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No, that's great. What was your process for getting the design done for it?
Design's obviously super important. I knew that having an American brand was going to be a really good differentiator on Amazon because obviously a lot of the products on Amazon are from Chinese companies and the brand names like are direct translations from like words that might make sense in Chinese but are Mandarin that don't make sense in English.
Sure.
So I wanted a really American sounding company and I wanted something that sounded unique. And with Wallaby, we were selling basically food pouches. So that's where the name came from because Wallabies have pouches, and we like, obviously they're very protective. They like trust their pouches to raise their young. So that's where we saw an interesting angle. And we wanted the logo to look very premium, and like, even though we were a new company, you kind of have to sometimes fake it till you make it, to have that brand perception. A lot of companies try to launch with really janky branding, and like, obviously like you're just going to assume that it's a janky product. And we're making a great product. We spent a lot of time on the actual development of our product. Okay. And we wanted the branding to match that. We wanted the logo to match that. And at first I hired someone on Upwork and it wasn't really that successful. I just wasn't getting back like branding that looked like I wanted it to look. And it was someone that was in Pakistan actually. And like people in Pakistan are great. It just wasn't kind of coming back in the American style that I wanted. So what I did was I went to Instagram and typed in like product designer. And I actually found like a lot in kind of that like for you search page that came up. Yeah, I just found a designer that like had kind of that like Americana protective, almost like just like very strong, outdoors experience. Like it had experience in the category that I was launching in and started the dialogue. I'd say all done, said and done because you don't just want like your products designed, you want like a brand guide as you expand. You want to have like your social icons, you want to have like your iconography, which is like the text. Right. Your products, you want to have all that. So all said and done, I think it ended up costing me about $2,000, and like that's more than you don't necessarily need to invest that much. But like I knew that was going to be like one of the biggest differentiators long term was having that really strong brand. And then I obviously trademarked, the brand. So I actually used what I recommend people use is the Amazon IP Accelerator, and you can just Google that, and that's essentially how you can get like early access to using your trademark and using brand registry on Amazon. So I had that. I wanted like a really strong logo that I could protect, that looked different than like what was already out there. Because if your logo is not differentiated enough, you sometimes have difficulty getting that trademark. Yeah. So yeah, I got all that and like all said and done, like I paid that $2,000, which is not insignificant, but it's been huge, in the value that, the brand has in terms of equity.
Yeah. How much did you specifically pay for the trademark?
The trademark with the Amazon IP Accelerator is not cheap. Again, it's something you need. It's like you're basically establishing like a very strong legal foundation for your brand. I think with the Amazon IP Accelerator, it's like $1,200 all said and done to get your trademark. But it's like $1,200 in the grand scheme of having a really good brand that's worth millions of dollars is nothing, right? Yeah. Like it's a lot of money when you're like have an unproven concept, but if you're pretty sure that you have something that's like valuable, you've solved a gap in the market, it's definitely worth paying for it. It's the people that try to protect themselves, launch, like you're going to have people that try to knock you off almost immediately. And I've actually had to like enforce my trademark several times on Amazon because other brands, mostly brands out of China, will do very similar logos or they'll use design that looks almost exactly the same as mine. And, Amazon makes it very easy to enforce that. So I look at it like, okay, I paid $1,200, but at the end of the day, I saved tens of thousands of dollars based on like other people trying to knock me off or steal my idea.
Filling your market like that, yeah, that makes sense. So that sounds like that was a good investment for you. Great. So the design trademark, that sounds like that went super well. Built a very strong foundation, the brand and everything. Moving us on to like software and tools, like going on. I guess this is for like as you're launching and also like finding your product idea, like Helium 10 or anything. what tools and like how much do you estimate like you spend on things like that?
Yeah, I spend a lot more now on tools than I did previously. I think that's like kind of a funny thing, but obviously like the more informed you can be before launching your product, obviously the better. At the time, I was pretty much only subscribing to Jungle Scout, and Jungle Scout's good. I think like there's masters of Jungle Scout. I've gotten definitely better at using it, but like I've seen it's like using Excel. It's like you'll see someone that's really good at Excel and you're like, wow, like you're like can do the macros and all this stuff. Like it was like when I was starting out, even though I had worked at Amazon, it was not really entirely clear to me. And there'd be like YouTube videos that are like an hour long, and like I just don't have the attention span. Like I don't know, a lot of times people that show videos on YouTube, don't really have the experience of launching a brand, which I know like you guys do. But when I was kind of learning to use Jungle Scout, I would just kind of type in keywords, or what most people do is they'll grab an ASIN from Amazon and it'll like approximate the sales. So that's what I was really looking for, was like I found quickly that products that had a lot of reviews sometimes just like were not doing the sales volume that I thought they were doing. And this was at a time when Amazon wasn't showing the sales figures for products. Like now you do a search on Amazon, it's like 1,000 sold per month or 2,000 sold per month, which sometimes I still don't trust. Like, I don't know if you can trust anyone, but directionally it's super helpful. And I actually saw that brands in like camping and outdoor products were doing a lot more sales volume on Amazon than I had initially thought. So that was like a really worthwhile investment, to use Jungle Scout. And then for tracking profitability, I used Helium 10, which has been helpful. I'd say I've transitioned from using Helium 10 for profitability to just now using it. Our team uses it to mine new keywords and to look at keyword ranking, which is obviously important to kind of understand like how you're indexing for keywords within your category. And then for product research, I've transitioned a lot more to using exploding topics and, just having a better understanding of Jungle Scout. So exploding topics is really good because it mines Google search trends. So that's been like a very worthwhile purchase. I think exploding topics is like the membership I have is like $100 something a month, but it just depends on like the tier that you can track a lot of different trends in there, and it'll tell you like how the trend has changed over time. And what I like about exploding topics is it's proactively giving you ideas. Like Jungle Scout, you kind of have to like have an idea and then go in there and like research it. Whereas like exploding topics dashboard is like, okay, you're in like camping, here's like 50 topics that like you might not be thinking about. And I get a lot of really interesting ideas there that I don't always have before I start kind of opening that dashboard.
Yeah, that's definitely a very cool new way. I haven't heard many other sellers talk about using that. So that sounds like
yeah, it's great.
When it came to get your product made after that, so you've got the idea by now. Did you get samples made beforehand?
Yeah, so what's really important is getting samples of your product, obviously, before you order. And I see a lot of sellers make that mistake. Is like China's goal, or any manufacturer's goal, is to like push product to you as quickly as possible. And different factories have different levels of quality control. A really good factory is going to understand that they want to give you a really good product, as that will result in you getting a lot of sales and then getting reorders. But a lot of factories are very transactional. You also want to make sure that you're working directly with a factory too, because when I first started, I was getting quotes from trading companies versus factories, and trading companies can be good. Essentially, trading companies act as the intermediary between a factory and the buyer, but they are adding on cost for you to actually get that product. So like when you kind of grow in your e-com journey or like manufacturing journey, whatever you're trying to do, you typically want to work directly with the factory at some point because you're just going to get back those extra points. You don't need an intermediary. Where they can be good is there's certain factories that are just like off the grid. Like they're just like have the workers, they don't have any internet presence, like, but they have really, really cheap prices. And sometimes it's good to have that intermediary because they're getting you connected to someone that already is super low. They might take a couple points, but it's still going to be lower than working with a factory that has like the overhead of running, a sales team and having like a strong social media presence. So
sure.
A lot of times though, like if you're working with a good factory and you have like a compelling brand story, you don't necessarily have to pay for samples. And then when you get the samples, you typically are going to be able to get a refund when you actually place the purchase order. So, but samples are cheap compared to like the cost, right?
Yeah.
Because if you get a sample and it like isn't better or like than what you expected, or like isn't better than what your competition is selling, or you inspect it and it's like not good, that $100 that you might have paid for that sample can end up costing you, your whole business, right? So it's never worth rushing when you're launching a new product. It's never worth rushing and trusting the factory. And another thing with the samples, you always want to get the sample like a final form of like how the product's going to be delivered to the customer, because a lot of times you'll get that sample, you know, and it like looks good, but then when they go to package it up, there might be some type of mistake, you know, in how they actually packaged your like unbelievable product, and that can kill you too. You know, people are opening it up, you know, and it like the tape is like sticking on your product, and they like open it and like the tape just like ruins it, or they cut it with a scissor in a certain way, like, and it's just unclear. You know, it's important to pay for actually the way it's going to arrive to the customer.
So did that end up costing you at all, or were you in the boat where that ended up being basically free?
For me, it ended up being free just because like I'm always a fan of like telling a really good story to China and being like, I'm a top Amazon. You can just make up, just be like, I'm a top Amazon seller. You know, that like if it's really compelling for them to want to work with you, a lot of times it'll be free. But certain factories just have the rules that, you know, it's like $50, $20 to get the samples, you know, depending on the type of product you're launching.
Yeah, but sounds like you'd argue that that's
I for me it was free just because like I like to try to be really compelling, and the like they get really excited, they want to send you the free samples, you know, and like that's ideally the best road, but don't let that hold you back. Some factories just have policies. Like I still sometimes pay for samples now, you know, at certain factories.
Totally. No, that's cool to hear though. Taking us back, so the samples went well, and then well, let's move on to the production run. So you got the samples in, you finally find your factory to work with. How much did you end up doing, or how much did that initial production run cost you?
My initial production run was about $50,000 for, you know, 3 SKUs, and like that's a lot, obviously. But I worked at Amazon. I saw what worked. I saw like if you built a really strong brand, you know, then it would be, you know, I really believed that it would be successful. And I'm always someone that like kind of puts both feet in the water before I just put like a toe in the water, you know, if I believe something's going to work. And I saw the trend moving for like emergency preparedness and like camping outdoors. Like it was something I was passionate about. I saw the numbers that what I saw is like inferior brands were selling on Amazon, and like I knew I would have something superior. So like for me to invest that, you know, knowing like what I thought I could achieve, it was worthwhile. And I also didn't want to get my inventory in and then, you know, stock out. I also have, you know, an Amazon advertising agency called Alt Group. So like I work with a lot of emerging brands. I've helped a lot of brands launch on Amazon. And I knew like seeing what other people did with less, you know, I knew that I would be able to do a lot. And I just knew that the Amazon algorithm really hurts people who run out of stock. Right.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to like be in that position where I'm like, oh, I like under ordered, you know, and now I'm out of stock. Right. So, yeah. But what I also would think about, you know, in hindsight is like one of my SKUs that I ordered was really good. And the reason I say it was good is because like I didn't think it was like kind of like an add-on SKU.
Yeah.
Like something else I sold. Now it's like a super crowded category that I kind of invented, but it's like a certain way of packaging oxygen absorbers where I put them in sets of 10 instead of putting them in sets of 100. And I saw that as like, oh, this will be good because like I'll sell the Mylar bags, you know, and then people will buy the oxygen absorbers and they'll put the oxygen absorbers in the Mylar bags. But like, there's no world that that's going to be like a top SKU. So I only ordered like, that might've been like 15% of the actual like products or inventory that I ordered. And I was like, not thinking that it was going to be like that great. But then like almost immediately that product caught the algorithm and it was like bananas. Reality is like, I should have ordered 70% of that product and like way less of the Mylar bags, you know? So you never sometimes know like what's going to catch, and that's sometimes why people will like try to be, you know, a little bit more careful of like how they distribute that or order a little bit less to like be ready for that storm.
Right.
Yeah.
So they can react. Yeah, that's interesting though. I guess you sometimes like the things you never know until you actually start getting those orders and see what Amazon does with them.
Totally.
You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but figuring out next onto the shipping, getting that product from China to US, you said that was kind of like a little bit unexpected at first. What did that run you to get the product shipped over here?
Yeah, so containers now so I ordered a lot of inventory, obviously. So like I had a full 40-foot container of inventory, which is like huge. Like obviously you'll see like trucks driving down the highway with like a huge freight container. Like that's how much product we brought in, you know, in our first order. And that's aggressive, right? Like most people are going to typically be bringing in like 1 pallet or 2 pallets of inventory to get started, which is completely fine. The other thing with like my products were fairly big. I'd say if you're going to like start selling on Amazon, you typically are going to want to be in like the standard size category, just because Amazon fees have just gotten really crazy recently. Like something that you always want to look at like the profitability of your SKUs before you launch. Like I underestimated how Amazon is going to charge for oversized inventory, and things that like you don't expect to be oversized with Amazon are often oversized. So like my products, like I don't have it here. For example, like this thing is like not that big, right? Like it's like you think it's like a pot, right? But you like sell that on Amazon, and Amazon's like, that's oversized, and like the fees on that are like, there's no world you're making money selling that type of thing.
Yeah.
Especially after like you have to import it. So like a 40-foot container at the time was costing like $4,000 to bring in that 40-foot container. So you basically have to like amortize, with the word amortize, against the costs of the goods that you have. So like if each unit right now is costing you like $4, and that container is like $4,000, you got to like divide that across like all of your units, and you can get really scientific with that, but I kind of keep it as like an average. But obviously different things take up different amount of space in that container, so that's like a really important cost to consider. The other thing that's important to consider is the Trump tax right now, is what a lot of people call it, where it's like the fees on different categories of goods. And you can do research on this very easily to understand like what the Trump tax is for your products. But for this category that I sell in, the tax for packaging products is like 25%, which is crazy.
Wow.
So like you bring those in, say your cost is $4, you have to report that to the government, and then they're going to charge you another whole dollar for doing literally nothing, and you just have to pay it. Like, what are you going to not? It's a federal fine or federal offense to not pay that, so you're obviously going to pay that. But some categories have no tax, it just depends on kind of the category that you're in. And what's also important to weigh is like containers can fluctuate in price. It's it's like Uber surge pricing. So like when the Suez Canal got like shut down or whatever, or any of those things, the containers at one point were like, I was paying like $22,000 for a container, because it's like, what am I going to stop? I'm just going to like shut down my brand because, the costs have gotten really expensive, so at that point I'm losing money pretty much on selling my products on Amazon.
Yeah.
But then it's like now the containers are like back down, they're like $4,000 or $5,000 again. So, just you got to have that variability, built into your margin.
Built into the margin so you can deal with it when it comes up like that.
Yeah.
Very cool here. So moving on to the next thing. I know you obviously run a visual agency, so this could have been a bit of advantage you had, but for photos, videos, and media, how much did that cost you, and what exactly did you do for the product?
Yeah, that was kind of like, I always like for people to think about kind of like what are their superpowers, when they like launch something on Amazon or like are trying to build a company. You obviously want to like work towards those powers. And I was always very interested in how a lot of people, when they launch products on Amazon, just focus on the product and just focus on ads. And they completely forget about the fact that the page on Amazon is one of the biggest impacts to how the brand actually performs.
Right.
Because when we were at Amazon, we found that majority of people never read the bullet points on the listings, because Amazon obviously has like a heat map of how scrolling works like on their pages. And we found that most people never actually scroll down on Amazon pages. So most people just look at the image stack, it's called, which are like the first like 6 images on the detail page. And if like you're not conveying all the information there in a premium way that's like really compelling to the value proposition of the products, like how you're solving the customer's problem, then you're losing. So I had an advantage there in that, I knew that was like a big factor. I knew that like a lot of conversion was coming from those 6 images. And if you look at Amazon's products too, you'll see like the Alexa devices and those things. Like Amazon spends a ton of time making really, really strong imagery in those 6 images, because they know that like that's where people are spending the time. So I had the advantage of focusing on that, building an agency that really focused on creative content, video content, had those resources built in. So for me, that cost, was nothing, right? Because like it is a cost, like I have my people, but at the end of the day, like I already have the people that do that. We really built out a very strong model for doing that for other brands, which obviously we charge for. But then, when they improve their images, in some cases, they see like a huge lift in conversion rate. We've had brands that we work with that see a 7 to 8x increase in their conversion rate just by having better images. But if you were going to go out and pay someone to do this, you can do it for really cheap, but you're going to get usually shitty results, whereas like I'd say like what an image stack probably costs to do like a really good job, is anywhere from like $1,200 to $2,500.
Wow.
And that's like really good though. That's like renders, because like a lot of times people do like product photos, but product photos actually are not what people want. They want like renders. Like if you think about like Apple's pages, right, on their website, like apple.com, and they're like showing a computer. Like, someone's not sitting there taking a photo of that computer for it to look like that. They're creating like a 3D render of that product that's like literally perfect. You know, it looks like better than it'll ever look in someone's house. But that's what customers want. They want to feel like you almost invested as in the brand and showing your content, you know, and like kind of understanding their problems. And then they're going to take the risk in investing in you, especially when you don't have a lot of reviews. You know, it's so funny is it's like, oh, I'm going to put out really like shitty images and like that look like they were made on like Microsoft Paint. And then I'm going to expect someone to buy my product that has like 5 reviews.
Sure. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. You know, like you got to think about yourself as an Amazon shopper. Like I never buy anything with 5 reviews, but like a lot of people do. But if it has really compelling images, you know, you invested in, then people are going to take that risk.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. That's a very cool insight about all the heat maps and all that. So last thing here is you talked about trademark. Did you also get like an LLC or brand protection for the specific product and brand?
Yeah, you definitely need to have an LLC because LLC just protects you. You know, it's basically creating a division between your personal assets and your business assets, which is really important. You know, knock on wood, but if anyone ever gets sued, you know, an LLC is what would get sued, that entity, right? And like they can't go after your personal assets unless they're a really good lawyer. And the thing is, the LLC is fairly cheap, you know, in comparison. I think I paid $350 or $400 to form my LLC. I'm a fan of Zen Business, which is just like a website that you go on and like just type in the name, and they have like really good customer support. I have like 7 or 8 LLCs through them now at this point. So yeah, it's an important thing. And then you obviously just want to like pick a name for your LLC, you know, that ideally aligns to like kind of like what you're planning to do with your business. It can be broad too, depending.
Yeah, totally. And then moving us on to like your product itself. I know you mentioned earlier, it sounds like that you don't exactly want to disclose your profit margins and stuff, but you're like alluding to like what's like a good profit margin to go for.
Yeah, of course. Like it varies across our catalog, you know, and we see certain products as entry points to our brand. So like on certain products, we're willing to take lower margin or even break even margin to just get people to be like, oh, I like these products. You know, like I really like what these guys are doing. They're creative. So a lot of times on like the lower price point products will be more in like a 10 to 15% margin, which is low, you know, but the way I think about it is like you put your money in the S&P 500, right? You're theoretically compounding 10% per year, right? Whereas like if you with e-commerce, like it's not easy, but if you do like a good job, you know, you're compounding a minimum 15%, you know, on a product that's like low margins. You're already beating the S&P by 5%. And then on top of that, you know, for our more premium products, you know, like what encapsulates more value to the consumer, we're typically able to get more towards that like 25 to 30% margin, you know.
Yeah.
So that's again like really beating the market at that point. And I personally like there's people that have differing philosophies on this. Like I have friends that do 10% or even 5% across their entire catalog, but that is at really high volumes. So it's never worth it to like not have like really low margins if you're doing like really low volume. So it's either like high volume, low margin, or to do low margin, you know, like low margin, you want to have the high volume basically.
Right.
So I think that's at the end of the day, like when we first started the business, I wish that I had thought more about profit, honestly. And like now I have someone on my team who just works on profit. Like they just are constantly looking at like what the profit is of my product catalog, how we can fluctuate our prices, looks at what's called price elasticity, essentially to see like if we increase the price of this by even $1, how does that, you know, change how the demand on the product? And once things are more like solidified, have like thousands of reviews, you can play a lot more with that pricing, you know, and you can start to understand like unit economics of how you can actually fluctuate things in order to bring in more profit to the business. And before we launch any products now, you know, we're really being careful with Amazon fees because Amazon's changing their fees. And as I said before, like there's a FBA fee calculator tool, which is an Amazon tool that they make public. And you want to make sure you really almost understand the dimensions of your products now before you even understand like the costs from China. Because a lot of times the fees that Amazon gives you are going to be greater than the fees that China is going to give you.
Yeah.
You know? So I have someone that's just doing that constantly because we're launching so many products that if I can, you know, guarantee that something's going to have like that 20 to 25% profit, you know, it's a trigger pull for me. But sometimes I'll think that it's like, a great product again. But it's not, the profit's not there. And you never want to launch something that's like low profit, in my opinion, because like you can't just anticipate like, oh, this is going to be a great seller, I'm going to sell like 1 million of these, right? You just don't know. So in my opinion, it's better to, take something, be almost positive you're going to make like 20-25% margins. And in many cases, you're only going to end up making 15%, or 10% on that item, unfortunately, just because some stuff's going to be unforeseen, and you just want to give yourself that wiggle room.
Totally. And so of those 3 SKUs that you talked about ordering at the beginning, are the bags the best seller of all of those?
Yeah. So interestingly, like the bags are like really, it's kind of neck and neck between the bags and the oxygen absorbers.
Okay. And then
yeah, go ahead.
So for the bags, how much do you sell the bags for on Amazon?
The price varies. Like we have a lot of different SKUs for those products now. So we have like some that retail at $19.99, and then we have some that go all the way up to almost $60. So it's kind of variable.
Yeah.
The best selling SKU right now is like $45. Wow. $45.99. So it's a lot of value in there. Like our product is engineered better than any on the market. We're doing lab testing on our products, whereas like a lot of competitors just will literally sell bags that people need to trust to put their food in. Like we advertise that, and it's true that our bags will keep oxygen out for 25 to 30 years. And that requires lab testing. Like you can't just be slinging these things and like allowing people to like figure out for themselves that that's not true. And a lot of companies, especially those out of China, don't do that testing, don't have the quality standards in place, don't care what US consumers actually get impacted. So we're doing that testing. We're ensuring that our bags are airtight. We're ensuring that our oxygen absorbers are lab tested, actually remove as much oxygen as they say they're going to remove. We're not rushing anything out there. And like, that's why we're charging more typically, is because like we do that testing, which costs, money. It's not free to like do that type of research. It's not free to, package as effectively as we package. That's why we just need to charge more. And the oxygen absorbers that we have, are like better quality than like you're getting in like the highest end food products,
Wow.
So yeah. And it's like the testing that's done on our side is just something that we want our audience to feel 100%, trust, and you can see that in our reviews too. Like Amazon's gonna be the first place to tell you if like something's not effective or working. You'll like get like 1 star almost instantly if something's like rushed to market. So yeah, that's why it's worth, typically investing to have a better product, and then you'll see, the upside on that.
Totally. Do you think we could take a look at some of these sales numbers for I guess probably the bags as a whole for some of your first few months selling?
I know like for sure, like we were doing for a while when we first launched the product, we were just doing like a couple $100 a day in sales, and I was like blown away by doing a couple $100 in sales when we first started. I was like, oh my God, like hundreds, like someone bought our product. Like I'm so excited. Like it's like the magic is happening, right? And like I had never sold my own thing on Amazon. I had sold like drop shipping on Shopify and like all that. And even I know some people really make drop shipping work, but I would sell like one thing drop shipping, but I would end up paying like 4x that in Facebook ads, but it was still really exciting when I sold that one thing. But then like when I was getting the hundreds of dollars in sales on Amazon, it was like profitable, like, immediately.
Sure.
And for the next, and then like, I'd say like a week or 2 went by and we started to get some really good reviews. We enrolled our product in Vine. And Vine's the program that, Amazon has their reviewers, and you get the reviewers and they leave the reviews. And like the Vine reviews were like really positive. They were like, these guys clearly thought, about the market. They understand the consumer. It's clearly like a really well engineered product. And that's when sales really started to go bananas. Was like when we got those reviews, we almost instantly shot up to doing like $1,000 to $2,000 a day, and profitably. And then at that point, I was like, we need to be really aggressive on ads, because I see ads always be like this big differentiator, especially in categories where not as many people are necessarily running ads.
Sure.
So we got really aggressive on ads, and I was like, honestly, I'm willing to spend at a 1-to-1 return. So basically like spend exactly on ads as, the return is. So if I'm spending $1 on ads, I'm willing to just make $1, which you obviously have an ability to burn, at that, to do that. But I was like, I want to be number one in this category. I'm going to do this for a month. I'm going to see the impact of just getting my product out there. And I always like products that have what I call like repeat customer value. So like customers like supplements, you buy like protein powder. If you really like it, you're going to buy it again. Like our products are the same. The buying window is not the same, but like a lot of people buy our product over and over and over again, especially if they're camping a lot, or like do a lot of food storage. So we saw that. We believed that would happen. We inevitably ended up seeing like huge review growth very quickly, huge sales growth at that 1-to-1, especially over that month. And obviously it wasn't profitable in that month, to be spending like that. But then when I lowered the ad spend back down and had a lot more reviews, it was like a really like powerful thing because I was now kind of recognized by the Amazon algorithm. Like the flywheel saw my products when someone typed in like oxygen absorbers or Mylar bags or like food storage or camping food storage, stuff like that. And I was like indexing like top of page pretty much every single time. And then I lowered my ad spend from what was like a 1-to-1. So like, a tacos of one, basically to like now being like, I need to be at like a 15 to 20% based on the product that I'm selling, so.
Right. And what was kind of like the time frame on all of that of starting the ads and then raising them, lowering them, and those things, those big things that kind of happened?
Yeah, so I'd say for the first couple of weeks there was like pretty much no ads, like just seeing what happened. Because again, we had no reviews, so it's like tough to really spend too much on ads because like reviews are this just like conversion mechanism. If you have no reviews, you're basically wasting money. But you still need to get traffic to the pages and just see kind of what happens. Yeah, divine reviews, and we got a few like additional reviews from just people that bought the product. Yeah, we got really aggressive with the ads, and we were spending I didn't want to like lose more than like a 1-to-1, so that's where we kind of kicked it up to like 100% tacos. It's not always advisable unless you kind of have like a really honed in ad strategy. But again, I have an agency that manages ads. We're Amazon certified. Like our ad managers know what they're doing, and we do this strategy for our partner brands as well. So I was pretty confident that assuming that was going to work, and we did that for a full month. That brought our reviews up to probably about like 50 or 60 reviews total for each product. Some got reviews faster than others. And then, that rocketed sales up. So then at that point, we were doing about 7 or 8K a day. Yeah. Really solid, after like a month of basically launching this. And then interestingly enough, like I know we're talking about Amazon, but we saw the growth there and we were like, there's a lot of brands in this category that are not really focusing on Amazon, and it kind of put a light bulb in my head of like, why am I not focusing on Shopify as a sales channel? And that's when I was like, I really want to be focused not just on, because we were doing Instagram and like getting really good views on Reels, but I was like, I really want to drive that traffic not to Amazon. I want to drive that traffic to Shopify, and I want to start to build like a really strong email list, and I want to really focus on like omni-channel marketing. So that's another investment I made, obviously, of like the Shopify channel. And I was able to get pretty much immediately with Facebook and Google ads, like a 2-to-1 return, which is not great, obviously. And then after about a month of honing in the Google and Facebook ad strategy, I was able to get to about a 5-to-1 return, which now we get like fairly consistently. And Shopify right now is about 65 to 70% of our revenue for the business. So Amazon's a great channel, but on Shopify, we're making 10 to 15% more margin typically per month, which at scale is a lot, because like during the pandemic, we did 8 figures in revenue. So like, which is like, obviously like we did 10 million in a year during that period. And that was like really explosive growth. And the margin was just much better having that Shopify channel. And now when we launch new products, we have like a huge email list on Shopify. We have like really strong social media presence, so it's been able to grow really quickly.
That's great to hear. And then, so from selling in year 1 to year 2, and even we could say year 3, was there any like big changes that occurred with the product? I know we talked about a lot of those like initial ones, and then the success in eventually honing in those ads for Google ads, things like that. But from year 1 to year 2, were there any big changes that happened or big milestones?
Yeah, obviously the sales just like grew really quickly. And then the problem with Amazon is you see a lot of Chinese competition now in certain categories. And like I invented the idea, and like I hate to say like, oh, I invented this. There's not one person selling the oxygen absorbers in sets of 10. when
Yeah.
I started doing that. Like I had the idea, I've used oxygen absorbers before, and I always hated when you open the oxygen absorbers that they like pretty much all go bad, if you don't have like, you have to like repackage them yourself,
Sure.
basically, because as soon as they get exposed to the air, they like get hard and they stop working. So I came up with that idea. I was the only SKU doing that on Amazon. And the sales like exploded because I was like the only person doing it.
Yeah.
And then within a month to 2 months, there was probably 20 Chinese companies selling oxygen absorbers in Mylar bags and bundles, which like wasn't happening before. And then there was like probably 10 brands doing the oxygen absorbers as I packaged them.
Yeah.
And what was really sketch was that one company had very similar style and branding to mine, which I thought was like really weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is like way too, because it's like, even the Chinese take some time to like get the product to be similar to like what you're doing. And I like started digging into this company. I like on Amazon, they like report the addresses, and like the addresses for Chinese companies kind of look like gibberish, like they're in Chinese characters. And I had a colleague that worked in China. And I was like, find like what this company's deal is. Like, I don't get how what they're doing is so similar. Turns out that company was like a brand that my factory started, and was literally like knocking off my products on Amazon. Like they literally like took my idea, created their own brand that they might have already had on Amazon, and were selling like basically the exact configuration that they told me that was going to be exclusive to me.
Sure.
And that like, so I was like competing with my factory who had like a lower price, who had agreed in writing that they would not compete with me. So I said to them, I was like, this is like bullshit, honestly. I was like, this is like, how can you guys do this? Because like you can enforce things in China too. Like not a lot of people know this, but like WeChat, technically, China has their own legal system. And a lot of people go like, oh, China is like all about faking and stealing and all this stuff. But like China has a very robust legal system. So like if you put your protections in place, you have in writing that someone won't do something, especially on WeChat, you can enforce that in Chinese court,
Wow.
And lawyers in China are not expensive. So I threatened legal action against that company. They shut down those operations,
Yeah.
quickly. But like it was just like very disheartening, to see that kind of like, I don't know, just like how, I don't know if the factory, they might still sell. I just might not know the brands that they sell to. But you really have to be careful of, protecting yourself as much as possible.
So are you still working with that factory, or is that kind of a call to action to find someone else?
I do work with them a little bit still. Yeah. Cause like, unfortunately, like they do have, we paid a lot of money for the lab testing and like the certifications and all those things. And like, I did invest in that partnership. They have since signed very formal legal documentation that they're not doing what they were previously doing. So that's another thing is like, I have, just with how much we've grown across this brand and the other brands that I own, like I have people that work for me in China now. So we have like a full team in China that like enforces, our products and like ensures that these things aren't happening. Like obviously things could still be happening. You might not know, but like if they're caught doing these things, there's very serious repercussions. And like I recommend that if you're going to work in China, you get what's called an NNN agreement, like literally the letter N 3 times. And basically what that means is like they certify that they're not going to work with other partners on the exact configuration of your product. Yeah. So that's a very binding legal document in China. Like they can lose like their production license in China if they get found out that they're doing that. It's very inexpensive to get something like that made. It's like maybe $150 to like get literally like a very formal legal document made. And what's really crazy about China is like, since it's a communist country, everyone there has like a social standing number, essentially like some Black Mirror shit. So like if you get caught like doing things, or you get in a lawsuit as your company, you get like a big red stamp like on your business documentation there. So like when they kind of learn that like you're like a smart person and you understand like their business practices and you understand their legal system, and like the consequences they can face, then you're not going to mess around. But when you're like, oh, like this is my first project, and like, you're like the dumb idiot guy that has like a good idea, you're going to see that same exact, like I was, you're going to see that exact same product you came up with on Amazon, in 30 days.
Wow, that's crazy. But it sounds like there's some steps you can take to solve, which I haven't heard before.
Just be smart, I would say. Look at how to protect yourself.
Yeah. And kind of on that same note, are there any big mistakes you feel like you've made along the way or things that you would have done differently second time around?
Yeah, I think I could have been way more profitable in certain years. I think like now, as I said, like my margins are like 10 to like 25%, on average. The business operates, around like 19-20% profit. For the most part, I'm planning on getting more profitable in
Yeah.
the coming years. But a lot of times, like I'm personally an advocate of getting a sourcing agent in China. So that's someone that essentially acts on your behalf to find you products and companies. Like you can go to Alibaba. It's good to go to Alibaba yourself. You're going to want to sort by certified factories, but even the companies that say they're certified on Alibaba are oftentimes not. It's good to just get like a bunch of quotes for the types of products you want to make. And then it's also good to hire a sourcing agent. So that's someone either on Upwork or, just going on Google and typing in like China sourcing agent. You're going to want to understand how that sourcing agent is being paid. So a lot of times in China, a lot of it's based on kickbacks and like favors, and like in some cases that's fine because like the sourcing agent will go to the factory and they'll get a percentage and your prices will be slightly higher. But like you're going to have an advocate, who wants to get your things taken care of. You're still going to want that person's not always 100% on your side, but they're just going to sometimes help you move conversations faster. And you can really say like, this is what I need my costs to be. And that person is going to speak, Mandarin and be able to help you. It's also good to look at other countries too that can potentially make your product. So when you have a sourcing agent, if they have experience working in, depending on the category, like Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Mexico is becoming really popular. Getting quotes from those places too to understand, because oftentimes the lead times can be faster, and you're avoiding the Trump tax if possible. So, and you can typically have more projects in the pipeline at one time. So like, so I only have so much time in the day. So I see like a sourcing agent as someone that can have, 4 or 5 of my projects working at one time, and that's why I have a team in China now who's working on, for me, like 20 plus projects at any given time. Because like if I'm just doing like one thing to the pipeline, like one thing, it's just like there's no scale there. You need to be able to like flush through multiple projects, and I'll end up working on 20 projects like right now. That have like all mapped out in Asana, but I only end up pulling trigger on probably 7 or 8 of them max.
Wow.
Because like the costs won't make sense for some of them. I'll end up deciding I just really liked the margins on something. I'll decide that the market's changed for whatever. But I like to you have to kind of push them through to understand, get those costs and understand like what different factories have and like the partnerships you can make. And then, that'll lead you to, a place where you feel like you can actually make profit. And then, I'd say like a lot of times people are very hesitant to kind of like pull trigger and like get something moving. I think that's another big problem is like people are like, oh, I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and go like, oh, like, how are you making like so much money? And you're like, how are you doing e-commerce or like this or that? And it's like, because like I took risks, I'm like, I've had multiple products that have failed, like, and it's like, it's probably not something I should admit like here, but like I've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars, but like the way I look at it is like, I've learned more in the last 3 to 4 years, like about growing a brand, scaling a business, like building equity, just like everything that people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for in school or an MBA program, I've learned in real life. And like, I've done more sales, than a lot of companies, at just like the level that we're at. And we have, 3 brands doing over 8 figures. We have ownership in brands doing over 9 figures. We would never have that unless like we had built the knowledge and the expertise of just getting started and understanding like how it works, right?
Yeah.
Until you actually like start to do it, you never really understand. A lot of agencies too, like we do really well with our agency. We work with some top brands. Like Adobe, Perch, which is like an Amazon aggregator, Sabra Hummus. Like we work with some really solid brands, and they really appreciate that I'm not coming in and being like, oh, like I know everything about Amazon, just trust me. It's like, no, I've literally grown, these really big brands, and I have my brands, and like I use the cash from my agency to fund the brand growth.
Sure.
Because I want to sell the brands at some point, but I also get the expertise back from scaling. So that's my thing, is just get started with something, try something out, and you'll learn very quickly. You want to obviously put your best foot forward, but it's just kind of a major thing to actually take that step.
Totally. No, it's great to hear.
The scale is, we launched, it's like hundreds per day. It jumped to, thousands a day, and the months looked like, the initial month was like, it a couple $1,000s, and then it jumped, over 6 figures. And now, every month is, 7 figures, but we did 7 figures in our first year. It's just not typical, of Amazon.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is very cool to hear from you and hear your story like that.
All right. Thanks, man. Talk to you.
Oh man, yeah, I'll catch you.